You are listening to the Jobbers Court Podcast, part of the W2M Network. We're a podcast for wrestling fans old and new. Court is now in session. Hello and welcome back to Jobbers Court, where we have a slew of roundtable topics for you today. Like always, I am Rasquatch, the King of Jobbers Court. I'm going to be leading my roundtable today in several different topics, but before I do, let's make sure we introduce the court. First, we have Cedric, the wise old owl of wrestling, the shining star of the Caribbean, which they're not on TV anymore. That sucks. So, then after that we have the man of 1,004 nicknames, and I don't know what he's going by today, but I do know he's very busy, so we may see him popping in and out. And I hope he's busy after he tried to give me a virus earlier today, trying to watch the Assistant Classic match of the week. So
yeah, you can call me the Hulkpocalypse today because I almost brought the end of days.
Yeah, and not the wrestling move either. So
no, your hardware, your computer.
Yeah, no doubt we wouldn't be having this podcast if he was trying to sabotage me. But also joining us today, though, we have a very special guest. So Jobbers Court, we want to say hello to Sean. He's a fellow podcaster as well as a manager of a Facebook group, as well as a podcaster for not just wrestling, for many other different types of sports. Before we can introduce him, we have to formally initiate him into the roundtable. So, Cedric, you got all the gimmicks?
Money's tight. I had to improvise a little bit. There's no smoke today. It's just me with the cigarette. Hope you don't mind. There's no blood. It's just tomato juice. But
I was thinking, since it's close to 4th of July, maybe we got some sparklers going.
Oh, give me a second. Let me look them up.
Hey, there we go.
I got a few pluses. We got a thunderstorm going over us, so the lightning gives it a really eerie effect.
Oh yeah, all right. Well, let's do it then. You ready?
All right, Sean, are you ready? You're about to You're about to become part of this court. Just hum with me, whatever you want to hum. Or you could call your Cuban friend from next door to hum with me too.
All right, well, welcome.
Hey, you're good.
To Jobbers Court. It's always something to get a new person on here with us, and just to kind of be nerds alongside of us, and to chat up with us for about 2 hours today. So, Cedric, you want to start us off and get us rolling the right way?
Definitely. Well, again, welcome, Sean, for being with us tonight. And
thank you for having me.
Usually, we always start off our guests with the one question that is on our minds. How much money do you have? Wait a minute, that's the next one. The first one is, like, what got you started into wrestling? What made you a fan? Everybody has a different thing. It's either a match, a specific wrestler, or just a specific moment in their lives that they became fans. So what's your story? How did you become a fan of wrestling, and how do you transition to becoming just more than just a fan, but actually part of the business in a sense to the podcast world?
I started, when I was a little kid. I saw Hulk Hogan on TV, and I was kind of mesmerized, so I kept watching. And once my both mom and dad, they're separated between going to living with my mom at the time and then going to my dad's. Both of them figured out that I liked wrestling, so it quickly became banned. So I had to act like I was watching a football game, and then I'd have to turn over to whatever, Superstars or Raw or whatever it was, in the commercials or whatever, catch glimpses. But I was kind of in and out until like around 98 or so, Attitude Era, when everybody at school was wearing wrestling shirts, and I'm like, who are all these guys? Oh, they're wrestlers. I remember I liked wrestling when I was a little kid, And so I started watching, and then from like 98 on, I just got hooked and didn't stop. And eventually led to me becoming a wrestler on the indies for a little bit when I was in high school. I got hurt, had a bad, like, almost to the point where I thought I broke my neck. And at that point, my dad had already paid a tuition for me to go to college, and he was like, okay, you got to make a choice. You either go to college or you do this. And so, I kind of had to choose the college thing because I was going to be out on the street by myself if I didn't. So, and then got into writing for FormalMania.com that I've written for 10 years now. And then I did podcasting about 4 years ago. Just kind of, I was writing for another website at the time, and they'd already started a podcast, and we kind of just say, let's start this, me and my friend, and their website actually died, and we kind of kept the podcast going, and it's turned the thing it is right now. It's about to be 4 years old. So.
Yeah, I had only been able to discover everything through your Facebook page primarily. I noticed that some of the guys that I was writing with when I was writing with Pro Wrestling Authority, they were involved with that group pretty heavily. So that's when I kind of joined in. And then when I saw you were letting us post our podcast on there, I was like, oh, awesome. So yeah, it's been great, and we're glad to finally get you on the show with us, because obviously I've seen not only the topics on that particular page, but your comments in general too are always usually pretty logical, and they kind of fall along in the smart fan that we kind of like to have on here. So awesome. So I noticed that you don't just podcast about wrestling. What all do you podcast about exactly?
Well, I podcast about wrestling, the current wrestling stuff, and then I produce a show that's about going back and reviewing old wrestling, or basically anything that's currently happening, and then a show about video games, which I also write video game reviews and stuff like that for Full in One when I'm not doing wrestling stuff, and also about football and other sports here and there. So.
Man, yeah. So how much of your time during the week would you say you probably have to delve into doing this stuff?
Well, what I do is I do everything. All the podcasts are done really late at night. We do the podcasts about midnight, 1 o'clock in the morning, live, and then they just show up on iTunes and whatever. So that's how we get around the whole having real lives, having the 5-year-old that I have right now, having the wife and all that, and just everybody's asleep, and I'm the one up doing a podcast. But I mean, I do 2 shows. I do 2 wrestling shows now. The Wrestling the Max show got split in 2. So I don't know. It's a constant cycle. When I'm at work, I'm listening to other wrestling podcasts because I can do that. If not, I'm listening to a football thing. If not, I'm watching some kind of either NFL Network, or I'm listening to some kind of video game thing because I've got. So it's usually an entire cycle of every day I'm doing something for one of the podcasts. Whether it's watching one of the wrestling shows we have to watch, whether it's taking down all the news, whether it's watching, like when football season starts, I have Game Pass and we watch all the games between me and another person. We split them up and watch those 45-minute versions of them. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, it just becomes one of those things where it takes up a lot of my downtime.
Yeah, well, it's definitely, like, when it gets to that point, you could tell it's transitioned to definitely more of a passion. So, to you, sports is obviously a big passion, not just a hobby. I know, like, myself, I haven't graduated out of the wrestling realm when it comes to trying to talk smartly about different things, but I know like a friend of mine does a video game blog, and just it's crazy the amount of time that he can spend doing those type of things. And then, like, for me, I do other nerd stuff, like I do my my Dungeons and Dragons and my other stuff, that I try to do once a week or so. But yeah, man, I just couldn't imagine. And I love football, but man, I just I couldn't imagine every week trying to watch every game, even in 45-minute bits. So, man, that's impressive, and that's pretty awesome. So, as far as your Wrestling to the Max podcast, you said it was split in two. So one's more of a current, what's going on today. The other is sort of from the past. How would you describe for our listeners? I've heard a couple of the shows, but how would you describe for our listeners kind of what your guys' personalities are on a show and what the kind of things that you really like to cover?
Well, actually, it's the retro thing is a completely separate podcast called Wrestling Unwrapped. I don't even host. It's two other guys that do it. The Wrestling Max podcast got split in two because we started figuring out that with the wrestling cycle the way it is, and you guys know this, how much news a podcast will drop, and the next day news comes out.
Yeah.
And so we're like, man, we got to make this thing more timely by the time. And then not to mention that we're talking 3.5 hour behemoths of show, and people can't listen to a 3.5 hour thing anymore.
Yeah.
So we just said, okay, we're gonna do Monday night covering Raw, news, ROH, and then Thursday we'll do TNA, Lucha Underground, NXT, and the news, and New Japan whenever that has a show, which they can have shows between Sundays and Wednesdays and whatever. So we try to basically make it we try to cover as much wrestling as we possibly can, but the shows that I just mentioned by name, that's the ones we talk about every week, or the promotions we talk about every week, and then we try to fill in news from other promotions where we can. So, we try to make it an all-encompassing thing where you get everything you need in a wrestling show between the two shows that we do. And plus the pay-per-view reviews and everything on those Sunday nights and stuff for WWE.
Well, I noticed that you didn't mention TNA at all in the breakdown of the shows that you guys cover.
Oh, yeah, we do TNA on Thursdays.
Oh, okay. Because I was gonna say, well, I know, just I'd like to ask people's opinions if they think that Ring of Honor has their TV program has kind of shifted to become more popular than TNA's programming on Tuesday nights. But I'm not sure what the ratings say, but I didn't know if you personally prefer one or the other.
Personally, ROH bothers me because their taping schedule is so weird, and right now they just had a pay-per-view, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the next show is a Women of Honor show, and then you're going to tell me that you're going to take 2 weeks off. So you do a pay-per-view, and then you don't have a show that has to do with your pay-per-view for a month almost. That bothers me.
Yeah.
That's why I can never say that ROH is TV, even though because they are so segmented around the country,
Mm-hmm.
they may get better ratings, and because they've been around just as much as TNA, and they haven't had all the problems that TNA have had. But TNA's show is more consistent, it's better, and it's timely. So
that's one thing I haven't heard in a while. Next to TNA, better.
Well, I was really just
the
throwing.
pay-per-view is a different thing.
Yeah.
But
No. I'm just saying it's been a while. I've especially online, very few people seem to still enjoy it, and they just got to give it a chance,
I was trying to throw a softball out there so when Optimistic Will's listening, he can get his TNA fix in. So just trying to throw that out there for him for when he comes back on the show. He's one of the 10-15 fans I think that they have left that just talk praises about it all the time. But cool. So we're gonna be covering a few different things today with you as far as your opinions on our topics. But before we do you want to let everyone know how they can reach all your stuff and just sort of get to know you from your writing perspective or from your podcasting world?
Well, it's really easy. You can either subscribe to an entire network that we have, which includes podcasts that I don't do myself, called the W2M Network, named after the Wrestling Max podcast. And you can find that on iTunes and Stitcher, wherever their podcasts, SoundCloud, YouTube, you can find it there. You can just subscribe to that. That gives you everything that I do podcast-wise. Or you can just go find the shows, Wrestling to the Max, Video Games to the Max, Football to the Max, Wrestling Unwrapped, whatever, by name on iTunes or wherever, and you'll find them that way. For 4-on-1, I basically just do the wrestling roundtable for the pay-per-view, for WWE pay-per-views. And I don't really necessarily write so much. I mostly do video game stuff as far as the writing goes. But on this other site that I write for, lastwordonsports.com, I write New Japan reviews of most of their shows. Like for the G1 that's about to come up, I review every show and then do a podcast kind of talking about what happened on the show as well. So, but yeah, I mean, there you go. And if you go to our Facebook group for the Wrestling Max podcast, you can pretty much see all of our stuff there too.
Awesome. Okay. Well, do you guys have any questions for Sean before we start hitting hard on these topics today?
Yeah, I just want to say, thanks for joining us on the show. Definitely good to have you on there. And just from listening to you, it kind of sounds like you're almost like a budding John Coachman, but on social media, kind of the sports center of pro wrestling with as much as you do. I dig it, man. That's pretty awesome.
Well, thank you.
Like I said earlier, we have a slew of topics today. What we're going to be covering is we want to talk about some past wrestlers, at least 3, that we'd either like or wouldn't like to see come back to the WWE for this upcoming brand split. We want to talk about today's feuds that are going on, and if we ever think that they're going to be able to surpass some of the feuds from the past. We're going to try something new today. We'll fill you in as we kind of go down the pipe here, but we also got, as always, our Instant Classic Match of the Week, and as well as 2 fantasy bookings for you today, since we're speeding up these tag divisions, since we've covered most of the teams already. So, Sean, as our guest, we always like to let you start out the roundtable, and I'd kind of like to know, what are 3 previous WWE employees, superstars, that you would like or wouldn't like to see come back to the WWE when they split off into the brands coming down the road here in mid-July?
And this one's a little different. I want to see Kurt Angle just from the aspect of, I want to see him have that at least one more match there for WWE. I think he would have to retire in order to actually be an effective manager for American Alpha, because if he doesn't, he's going to overshadow them. But, I mean, even from if he doesn't wrestle more than one match and he's just a trainer or whatever, what he can do for all of those guys and girls is going to be terrific. And so I think he would be a great help for WWE if he comes back. I think from a star perspective, even though who knows if he will or he'd get out of how long he has left on that TNA contract or whatever, but I think Jeff Hardy would let's put the drugs out of the whatever. I'm assuming he's clean at this point. He would help them a lot. I think from a star perspective, you got a guy that people automatically can identify with. He helps them from, you're going to get some good matches. If you're going to have that Money in the Bank ladder match or any kind of hardcore match, he's there too. Just, you can put him in so many different roles. He helps, And one guy that's probably going to be there already, Tajiri, who's there for the Cruiserweight Classic. And I think, depending on who you read, he's signed or he's not signed. I haven't seen the big websites talk about it yet, but some have. Just seeing him back with Regal was hilarious, for one. And then just, again, another guy that can help along some of the Japanese talent that's in there in NXT. And just, he's another veteran that you can put in any spot, and he works there.
Okay, well, what about maybe one name that you just really don't want to see come back?
I don't mind if they want to bring him back for WrestleMania because he's on the video game and whatever, but I don't want to see Goldberg be back for an extended period.
Man, you're a smart man. Continue.
Yeah, just I don't think it's going to work out well.
With the Goldberg thing, I just think you have to have a passion for wrestling, and I don't think he ever really did. I mean, he really liked football, but when he couldn't play football anymore, it was something that he could do that was physical, and I think that's so. Sometimes I question his motivation for the business, but I guess who am I to judge?
Oh no, he self-admitted that he looked at this as a business, and it was never about being the best wrestler or whatever. It was how he could make money, very much like Brock, you know.
All right, well, some good choices there. Hauckster, what do you think of Sean's picks, and do you have some of your own to add?
Well, I definitely agree with the Goldberg analysis. As cool as I think it would be to have him like a one-off match at WrestleMania, say possibly against Roman Reigns or Triple H, I think that would be kind of neat. I've always wanted to see a Goldberg versus Ryback one-off, just because of the comparisons and the jabs at Ryback. But who knows if Ryback's ever going to come back? But for a prolonged period, I don't see any real money making in that. So he's pretty much towards the bottom of my list. Some guys that I would really, really like to see come back. Number one for me is obviously Kurt Angle. I think he still has a few more left in him. Maybe if it's just a one-off match at WrestleMania, I think that would be pretty sweet. Seeing him go one more time against Brock, I think that'd be kind of cool. If he is back for a more prolonged period, I would love to see a good couple month-long feud against Rusev for the U.S. title. I think that would be a big money-making storyline there. Some other guys I think I would like to see. Yeah, you mentioned Jeff Hardy earlier. I would actually like to see him and Matt both come back, but instead of going to the main roster, I would actually like to see them more in NXT, because I think the NXT tag division is really hot right now. I'd love to see them going up against Tommaso Ciampa, Johnny Gargano, or possibly even a TM61, the Mighty, going up against the Hardy Boys. I would love to see some of that. Going up to the main roster, honestly, I think it'd be more nostalgia than anything else, unless Jeff came back as a single star by himself. I think there's more money with him by himself than anything else. And probably the last person I would really, really like to see come back, and even if it is just a one-off match, would honestly be Trish Stratus. I know she's made mention of wanting to come back for one or two matches, but it'd be really neat to see her against Charlotte, or maybe even against Sasha, just to see that old Attitude Era type women's wrestling against the new era of women's wrestling that's really starting to take off. I think those would be pretty cool.
Yeah, and Trisha's still pretty young too. I didn't realize, she got out really young out of the business. So that's interesting. That's a good one. Cedric, what about you?
Yeah, I think the Kurt Angle is probably unanimous. People wanting to see him back, even if it is for just a short stint. I'm not too sure if he really could do the Al Snow, who is coaching now in TNA. I'm not sure how much of a manager coach role he could have with American Alpha. I really wouldn't want people to focus more on him and not focus so much on the team. But definitely because of the comparison, to see the world's greatest tag team just do a quick stop in the WWE to even challenge the American Alpha, that would be pretty interesting. Or even Shelton Benjamin as just a single star. I think the guy always has star power, and even after he left WWE, some of the matches that he had for different companies, you could still see the guy was a pretty good wrestler. He always was. Kofi Kingston reminds me so much of him because they both had that, that aerial style, more risky style way of wrestling. So those two, he reminds me a lot of Shelton Benjamin. Another wrestler that I wouldn't mind seeing, even if it's just hopefully for good this time. He's not a WWE old wrestler per se, but he made his little debut at NXT and kind of went back to TNA. Definitely James Storm, if he were to come back, but this time a little bit more permanent. I think his talent would definitely be welcomed in the main roster. And speaking of females, Mickie James,
Yeah.
would definitely, if she's still wrestling, if she still could wrestle, she definitely would
She certainly is.
would definitely give the women's division a pretty good boost. I think she's a really good wrestler. If just like how Stanley said, if Trish were to come as well with her, that definitely will be something to look forward to, because I think this women's division, as quickly as they peaked, they have gone down pretty just as quick, and I think it needs a little boost. And it's not just about Sasha Banks. I think those two ladies will definitely give the women's division a good boost. Goldberg, like you guys said, I think for a short stint would be nice, but not for a long time, I guess. Wrestlers that I really don't really care for to see much, and I know a lot of folks have thrown their names around, not sure why. The whole CM Punk thing, people let it go. You know, I don't see why he will come back. Not at this point. Maybe down the road, maybe, but the way he expresses himself doesn't seem like it. He's burning more bridges than he's building, so I don't see why. Rey Mysterio is another one, very, very injury prone, so I don't see why bring him as well. And he's pretty much doing pretty good in Lucha Underground anyway, so. And I kind of thought about this. The Hardys, I really don't mind seeing them back in the WWE, whether single or tag. They have their thing going on in TNA. It's kind of weird, but it's kind of different. And at the same time, you know, after seeing what the Dudley Boys have become, I definitely wouldn't want to see that happening with the Hardy Boys. I think let's just focus on the teams that we have, the new guys coming up from NXT, or the ones that have already come up, and let's just keep developing these guys, which is always I think that's always the thing to think about. You know, we have talent that needs to continue to be developed and pushed. Sometimes bringing old, former WWE wrestlers may take away from these guys, depending on what storyline or how do they truly come in. Is it just a short stint, or is it going to be a long stay? So, but there are a few that I wouldn't mind seeing, just like I mentioned, and a few that I think they're doing too good where they're at to just mess it up.
See, I did a lot of research looking into this, and I've determined, like, if I had a number one draft pick of some of these guys, I would pick the Great Khali. No, I'm kidding. All right, so let's see. For me, Shelton Benjamin was actually on the top of my list. I would love to see Shelton come back and do his thing. I mean, he's still one of the better. He'd come back still being one of the top athletes. I think you know in the company. One that's kind of an oddball that I just think it would be cool to see is to see Lance Storm back for a little bit. Maybe do one last thing with Jericho or something. 'Cause I know he still wrestles. He's primarily a trainer, but just to wrestle from time to time. But as far as people who could actually make a true impact, there's just not a lot left. I actually want Cody Rhodes back. If I had that choice, and I would let him come back and do his thing as Cody Rhodes. So really, to me, Shelton Benjamin, Cody Rhodes would be two. Ones I don't want to see, obviously you guys know my opinion on Goldberg, so we'll just go ahead and reiterate that. So it sounds unanimously we don't want to see Goldberg back, but another one for me is the Hardy Boys. I completely agree with you, Cedric. Even in a singles capacity or as a tag team, I think that they're on top in another company right now, where they're the top stars over there. If they were to come in, they would just be another group of guys. I just don't see them as being anything special outside of that. So those are my picks. Anybody got any last takeaways or anything else before we go ahead and move on?
You know, I'm not sure if anyone mentioned him, but a name that just kind of popped up was Johnny Mundo or Johnny Morrison.
Yeah.
I think he's improved leaps and bounds down there at Lucha Underground. And I think he might have some more left in him, possible main roster. I don't know if he'd get to the top of the card with some of the guys like Seth Rollins, Dean Ambrose, AJ Styles that we have now. But I'd love to see him do a few more Intercontinental title runs. I think that'd be pretty neat.
Yeah, I think he's great, but he's another one that I think if they brought him in, he'd be stuck in mid card hell probably. I'm trying to think of guys really off the top of my head that could come in and legit be, back to close to carrying the company, and I don't know. I think that the wrestling product from a wrestling perspective is so much better now than it was back in the Attitude Era, and then for the most part through Ruthless Aggression outside of the top guys at that time, and most of them aren't with us anymore. So really, for modern guys that could still come in and work, there's just not a lot of them that I would love to see. Obviously, Kurt Angle could still come in and work a few matches. You couldn't rely on him to come in and work consistently, I don't think. But yeah, you guys have any other names of some guys that might be able to come in and actually be on the top of the company?
Not former WWE. Not, to be honest with you, I'm drawing a blank. I don't really think of a name that at one point was a star for the company, left, and can actually come back and just be a star again. I really don't.
Yeah, actually, I thought the best pick of all of them actually was probably either like a Mickie James or Trish Stratus. I think that they're two that could come in and be back on top of the women's division. But I also believe that people might be surprised at how good the women are now too, because from a wrestling perspective, even some of them can run circles around what some of the women were doing back then. But all right, cool. Well, we were able to cover sort of our likes and dislikes. So let's transition this into talking about feuds. Cedric, or actually, we'll go back to Sean. Feuds that we have today. We have Sami Zayn. That's a pretty strong one with Kevin Owens. We have the two Hardys that are having their feud going on right now. Brother Nero and Matt Hardy. Do you think that feuds today stand up to feuds in the past? And if not, or if so, just kind of talk about why.
I think it's difficult now with all this. We want things attention-wise constantly changing. Just in general, the mass audience, not even just us on the internet talking about things. I think the mass audience gets tired of watching the same match over and over. And it's very hard for, let's say, at least WWE in a way, to make a match feel different each time, because they usually overrun it before you even get to the first or second pay-per-view. They'll do great for the 3-month set, like they're doing with Cena and AJ right now, or they've done with Cena and Kevin Owens in the past, or just some of the older matches. But it's so hard for me to think of, other than maybe Owens and Zayn, where they can kind of bring it here. Well, this will be the last one that we do for a while, and we'll see seeds of it pop up here and there throughout the years. But they're just, these feuds are built to last for like 3 months, 4 months, and then they end. And so it's hard for me to go, oh, we're gonna have a feud that's gonna last for years. I can think of some maybe in like other promotions outside of WWE. If you go to New Japan, like the Okada Tanahashi feud that lasted for years, and it just ended earlier in January. Then they're gonna have another match in the G. It's just stuff like that just doesn't really happen so much anymore, and it's hard for me to think of even like Puma and Mundo. That thing's still going on in Lucha Underground. They have that come up and down throughout the season, the 2 seasons that have been there in Lucha Underground. So, and I'm sure you'll get more of it in season 3, in January, whenever that thing starts. I mean, it's a very difficult, not in WWE at least, I don't think so. Just not the way that they book, but in other promotions possibly. And the thing with Jeff Hardy and Matt Hardy is this is the only version of their feud that's actually been good. Let's be honest.
Yeah.
The feuds that they've had in WWE were just not good. But who knows? That thing has been interesting at least. But I don't know. It's so hard for me to go. Oh, when I think of so many classic feuds from back in the day, could they really hold up to today? I think of feuds so differently today than before.
Yeah. Do you think that there's a feud that's going on here recent time? I guess you did mention one already, that happened in New Japan, but I was going to say, is there one that 20 years from now we're going to remember? Like we do Piper Hogan or like we do Flair on Steamboat?
I think Owens and Zayn has that opportunity. I think definitely that has that. Other than that, I mean, we're talking about stuff that's already happened. I don't know of anything. If you want to involve like the stuff with, if the Bullet Club ever rises to what it was when it first started again, which depending on which company it's either hot or it's just barely there. I don't know. I think Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn is the only one because they have that history that goes on throughout so many different years. That's going to be one we're talking about. Other than that, it would have to be something that maybe this brand split can start that, where they have feuds that can go on for a while. Maybe they leave it alone for a little bit, but then it can reignite or whatever. It just depends on guys they come and go so much now too that it's so difficult to be able to say maybe John Cena, CM Punk too. We would think of something like that, or Cena Edge or whatever. Just I don't know about right now, other than the Owens and Sami Zayn.
Okay. Cedric, how about you? What do you think of feuds today versus feuds in the past? Do you think they're comparable?
I agree with what Sean was saying, and that's not really. I don't really have much to add. I'll try to, I guess, my own spin or flavor on it. We had, I think, how Stanley and I had talked about this before, and I've read a few things online as well. The Bret Hart, Shawn Michaels, that was huge. You know what I mean? That's something that we still talk about because it was so real. There was a real reality to it, just not in the ring, but also outside of it. And even Bret Hart at one point with Stone Cold, where they had, even though maybe outside the ring there wasn't that animosity, but they made it believable. I don't think we're gonna see something like that again. I think some of the points that Sean made are really well put. Wrestlers come and go nowadays. They're not sticking to the company as long as some of those guys were before. Before it was either WWE or WCW or WWF, WCW, depending, and that's about it. Now it seems with the resurgence of certain indie companies starting to become more major league, sort of, even TNA, regardless of what people say of TNA, sinking ship, whatnot, or Ring of Honor, even though I don't get a signal anymore, so I haven't seen them for a while. And some of the other companies, PWG, some of the other ones mentioned, NJPW, there's other options. So I think it'll be kind of difficult to have those kind of feuds in the WWE. Again, another thing that Sean mentioned was the way they're booked. They're booked for like 1 or 2, 3 months, and that's about it. They're done. Seems like today's fans get bored easily, and they don't seem to want to see something prolonged.
I think
too
the
long.
Shield too. The three guys in the Shield, like what they do against each other, that could be one that maybe.
That too could be one of those, but I hate to be anti-Will, the pessimistic one. I don't really trust the booking today or creative the way they write things. To me, for example, the Sami Zayn, Kevin Owens, for that feud to be a good one and continue, you do have to mention some of the stuff that has happened in the past. And I know they hint on it here and there, but they're not really going to get too in depth in it without mentioning other companies and actually showing footage. I don't think they're going to get to that point. even trying to decide, even last week when I was watching it, them trying to really tell what is going on, what really started this, even that was kind of like in a gray area, and they were trying to explain, and Kevin was trying to explain why, and it was still like kind of like iffy, like what you're saying is not really a good reason why you guys are feuding. But I just, with the split, we don't know how it's gonna work out. If they're separate, how they go. Today I was watching clips of the old Raw versus SmackDown, and I was just enjoying those clips, and I was like, man, I wonder if they can go back to this kind of action and this kind of matches. But I just don't trust the creative to write a good storyline to continue, or booking for that matter, the way they get booked, for a storyline to be as great as the old past storylines that we've talked about. It's just not. It's too quick. You go from one thing to the other, and they're not really that memorable. And again, the fans, even the way the fans interact nowadays, is almost like they get bored too quickly, very quickly, to pull the trigger on something like, well, that sucked, or this is boring, or let's go to something else. So I personally don't think there is right now a feud that can last that long, that we'll be talking about it for quite a while. And if it were to last that long, that it becomes a feud, I don't think it would ever be to the level of some of the older stuff that we had. It's very different.
Okay. I definitely agree with all of that. I think it all comes down to booking and what you're looking for in your company. I don't necessarily think the WWE really cares about long drawn out feuds, and that's why we just don't see them right now. But Hulkster, what about you? What do you think of feuds today versus feuds of yesteryear?
Well, I think y'all made a really good point as far as just the way fan reaction is, and just our society in general. We're very right here, right now, give it to me now kind of culture. And if we don't get that immediate payoff, you get a lot of gripes and complaints. That being said, we also love nostalgia, so it's easier for us to remember those older feuds as these big grandiose spectacles, and comparing them to what we see now is harder, because we have so much passion and so much love for what we used to see. And just over the past, probably 10 years, it's definitely been a decline, especially for booking. And that's been the real heartache for what we get now. As far as current WWE feuds, I still think that the Sami Zayn and Kevin Owens has that potential. I think no matter how long they're in the company and what direction they go, I think bringing those two back together is always going to be a money-making opportunity. I would love to see a match similar to what they had in ROH with their tables, ladders, and chairs match. What they can do in the ring is just phenomenal, and how great of chemistry they have together. And that's, from in real life being best friends for such a long time, that they have that trust there. So it's always good to see them in the ring. Another potential feud, again, talking about the Shield guys. What I'm afraid of is that I think we've already seen the best of that feud. 2 years ago when Seth Rollins won Money in the Bank, we had Dean Ambrose chasing after him for a good, solid 3-4 months. Those two were the headliners, even though they didn't have the belt. And those are some of the best matches that I think I've ever seen, at least from WWE in the last 10, 15 years. I just hope that there's a turnaround in booking, and we can start getting some of those longer feuds, because that really does make the payoff a lot better. But yeah, again, I agree with a lot of what you guys said. There's really not much else to point out there. Talking about some of the TNA feuds, the Hardys. To me, that's just been weird. The action's been good, the story's been good, but it's been more interesting than entertaining, if that makes sense. And I think most of that is just because of the Matt Hardy change in character. It's been so long since we've seen something different out of him. I'm just still trying to wrap my head around the whole thing. So, I don't know, down the road memorable, but for right now, it's definitely entertaining.
Okay, I know for me, when I was going through these, I was trying to think of something that was fairly modern that would hold up to test of time, and the one I thought about was John Cena and The Rock. That kind of came to mind, and I know they were kind of able to piece that thing together for a couple of years, and sort of keep that that fresh and keep it going as far as the excitement level of having those guys face off. I disagree about the Shield guys. I really do. Second. I think that there's a lot of gas still left in that tank, but they have to do it right. They haven't really looked to exploit things the way that they truly could. Like I could definitely see down the road there being like possibly having Ambrose, Rollins, Reigns, whoever you want to have that done. But I mean, obviously they all know where each other live and they know where they're from and all that. I would love to see some Attitude Era-esque stuff where, you know, maybe Ambrose shows up at like Roman Reigns' house for some reason, and they end up fighting like in front of his daughter, or just something small like that. You could go to add like heat to a whole feud. I guess Rollins would be better to do that, but there's a lot of things out there that there's a lot of things they could exploit with that, as far as the attacks and the different playing off of each other and where they're from, or like, you know, if Reigns attacks Ambrose in the middle of Cincinnati or something, who knows? I know there was a big buzz when Ambrose got attacked outside of that parking garage by Brock Lesnar, and people seem to like that. So I think there's definitely a thing out there for it. They're just not really getting into those type of feuds or those type of storylines anymore, and I'm really not sure why. There's a lot out there that they could be using. I think right now Sami Zayn's Kevin Owens obviously is a good feud that's held together for a good period of time, but I wouldn't put it up there with a lot of the feuds from the past. So I don't know. Looking at modern feuds, the only one I could think of off the top of my head was CM Punk, John Cena, and John Cena and The Rock.
Yeah, the only thing for me about the John Cena The Rock feud is it was so built up, that 1 year anticipation for the once in a lifetime match. That was just great. The second match, the rematch, to me, I think took a lot of steam out of that feud, and it almost kind of diminished the first match for me a little bit.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I can see that.
And it really wasn't so much like a feud, because it's just like you're saying, when you compare it to the old feuds that we're talking, the legendary feuds, you know, these folks had countless matches throughout their time around each other, where there wasn't in various companies as well, you know, that Cena Rock, I think Rock was just in and out, not so much matches between them before, you know what I'm saying, before they got to that big moment.
Yeah.
So it wasn't so much of a feud and more like a build-up to that one moment. And then when it happened a second time, people were like, really, you know, you just killed something that was supposed to be so memorable, and all of a sudden we have a second one that was even less memorable. And then the ending and the hug at the end kind of turned off everybody. It was so obvious coming that people were like, it's in the same. But something that you did mention when you mentioned about the whole like showing up somebody's house, it's funny because Stone Cold was talking about something similar today. He was mentioning how, not today, this past week in his podcast, he was talking about how the WWE is so afraid to dive into reality, into things that they did before, where they would take risks and put things on TV that made people talk about it. You know, even though you knew already that it was sports entertainment, but they were touching subjects and doing things that people were talking about for weeks.
Yeah.
He was mentioning that, you know, the famous, like, because of shares and whatever, they're afraid of doing stuff like that. And he also mentioned too, not giving things time to develop, just going so quick at it that it doesn't make sense. Like today you're feuding with one wrestler, 2 months later you're feuding with somebody else, then a month later you're feuding with somebody else, and we're calling them feuds, but really it's just 2 or 3 matches that you see on Raw and SmackDown end up in a pay-per-view, and then you're done. So those were really good points that you brought up.
Yeah. There are some feuds where the people really only had a couple matches. Like, I can think back to Hogan Andre, and like obviously that was one of those feuds that's going to be remembered. forever. And really, I think they had two matches, I think. Two main matches, and then they had one that was non-televised, I think, that they had prior to WrestleMania 3. But really, you don't necessarily have to have a ton of matches to have a good feud, but it's got to be something that makes you remember it. Like the thing that got me into wrestling is the Cobra Bite, Randy Savage, Jake Roberts. The matches though weren't very good. During those times, I went back and watched a lot of those matches, and the matches weren't really that great. But I'll always remember that story because of the build-up and what happened. So a lot of times I think at the end of the day, it just comes down to we're not going to remember a lot of these feuds because it's just wrestling matches. There's not anything else to hook us into that story. Like, I'll remember this Hardy's feud just because of A, how weird it's been, B, like how much it makes me laugh, like some of the stuff and some of the shooting of the segments and stuff like that. It just makes me laugh, so I'll always remember it. But the casual fan 10 years from now, I don't know. They don't have a lot to look at and say, wow, that was a really, really great series of events that these people had. So
yeah, it's like you said, the reason for the feud is really what makes it the feud. Because I think with Under the Giant was like the betrayal of the friendship. Hogan would always, I guess, Hogan was the Becky Lynch before Becky Lynch was around.
Yeah.
He that also made it big. Like, here's my best friend, my mega power buddy, whatever. The next thing you know, this betrayal. So it's like you said, it's the reasoning behind that feud is what really makes it the feud. And you're right. It's not how many matches, but the emotion, the why. If it's just, hey, we fought one or two times, we hit each other for 2 weeks, and that's it, we're done. That doesn't really build up. And like you guys already said, I think right now the one with the most potential will be the Kevin Owens, Sami Zayn. If they do it correctly, definitely. And maybe the Shield guys, maybe.
And I think it's also just because we blur that line so much too nowadays, as opposed to all those other eras that we look at these classic feuds, and we know that when the cameras are off, they may not be hating each other or whatever, or even in certain situations where just they're not feuding right now, so they're not going to act like they're mad at each other. And it's silly. Like, hopefully down the line, Owens and Zayn are always going to have this thing against each other where every time they see each other, there's going to be this thing with them where it isn't just buddy right now because we're not feuding. Like, maybe they have a time where they're a tag team and that's cool and everything, but eventually I'm sure Owens will turn on him or whatnot. But same thing with the Shield. There's always that possibility of there's going to be that thing there, But so many of these feuds, like, oh, well, they just forget about each other and they'll tease it a little bit, but it's never anything where you feel like, oh man, now I remember that feud was awesome or whatever, because they want to make you forget about it because they want it to feel fresh.
Yeah.
When they do it again, and that's what stinks, is like recently they've really started using the past a lot more. But before then it was always like, oh, these fans are stupid. They forgot what happened a year ago. There's no way they remember that these guys feuded a year ago. Let's just do it again.
Yeah, it's funny you talk about that, like just something happening, because I can't remember what Royal Rumble it was now, or off the top of my head, but I'll be damned if I didn't laugh out loud and I didn't get goosebumps when you had that Rumble where Jimmy Snuka comes in, and then Roddy Piper, they're old as hell, Roddy comes in like right after him, and that look that Jimmy Snuka gives the curtain before Roddy even comes out, and I stood up, like, watched it again and jumped out of my seat going, oh my god, because you had Roddy Piper coming down, and of course when he gets there, him and Snuka, go toe to toe, and it's one of those things to where, like, those guys probably hadn't crossed paths in 10 years, and so it was just one of those things that was so great. Like when you saw them together, you just, if if you can get that, that memory of Piper hitting him with that coconut, and then now, 20 years in the future, here they are, and they're ready to face off again. I love stuff like that, like when it's nostalgic, and it was the perfect amount of time. They both ended up getting thrown out shortly thereafter. But a spot like that done at the right time, it's just so memorable. And I think that what you're talking about really turned up that memory for me. So even if Zayn and Owens are on different shows, watch them meet in the Royal Rumble, and it's like they never stop. They just start beating the hell out of each other again. Stuff like that is precisely, I think, what we need. And that's the problem with kayfabe having died. You don't have that where the guys literally don't hang out. They literally don't see each other. Now it's like everybody's friends, and so yeah, I think that's kind of the death.
Well, that's what's cool about the Brand Split is they won't see each other because they can't.
True.
Other than on all days or whatever, I'm sure.
Yeah. Just don't split up the New Day, please. That's all I ask for the Brand Split. But all right. Do you guys have anything else to say about feuds?
Yeah, I just want to say that my favorite feud of all time, and one that I tend to go back to when watching the network, is the old Dusty Rhodes Ric Flair. That's something that I could watch over and over and over again, and yeah, that's one of those things you just don't see much of. But yeah, that's just one that always stuck out in my head.
What about you, Cedric? What's an older feud for you that you're just gonna remember for all time, and why?
Wow, that's a pretty good one. I wasn't even ready for that. But I'll be honest. I'll be honest with you.
I just gave your brain a virus. Continue.
No. You mentioned it, and I'll be honest with you guys. It's the first feud that came to my mind is not even American wrestling. It's Puerto Rican, to be honest with you. When I was in Puerto Rico, Carlos Colon, and actually I think this happened because I found like 6 YouTube channels today that carry over a decade of actual footage from wrestling in Puerto Rico. Carlos Colon had a feud with Sabio Vega, which I'm trying to get to be part of our special guest for us. They were friends, they were enemies, they were tag team partners, there was betrayal, they went back to being enemies, and Invader Numero Uno, or number one, those were feuds to me, guys that, they either were friends or enemies, but it just kept on going. You never knew when it was going to happen. And I guess if I stay with American wrestling, definitely for me, Hogan against anybody, any feud that he had, it was always amazing how he could turn two friends, whether it be him and Macho Man, how that became from being friends to just their feud, or even him with Beefcake. So, and there's definitely the Shawn Michaels and Bret Hart. It was amazing to see those two, that there seemed to be kind of a respect in the ring, but at the same time there was this just animosity, and it took so long for them to so-called bury the hatchet. But even then, that so-called event didn't even look real. You can still see there was a little bit of animosity between them. So those are the ones that really stand out for me.
Right, Sean, what about you? What would you say your favorite feud is?
I mean, for me, because it was the first one I ever really watched, because I didn't mention this, but the thing that really got me to watch wrestling again was I had a friend who had old tapes of Dusty Rhodes, and like seeing some of his promos, and even as a young kid, like they identified with that, and like they had a lot of the Flair Dusty Rhodes matches, and not even knowing like all that history of them, just watching them, you immediately felt for Dusty, and you hated Ric Flair so much just because, and that guy was just an asshole, and he was a jerk, and Dusty he looked like, my best friend's dad, and like it's just, I mean, he talked to me about stuff I could identify with, and stuff I was seeing in my own house, and like barely making the rent, and all that kind of stuff, just like, and then you'd watch the matches, and it's like, wow, they're not doing a whole lot, but the intensity and everything is just, it's amazing. And you don't get that so much anymore. It's amazing. And then there's stuff from Japan, like anything that involves like one of the four pillars of all Japan, like Misawa and Kobashi. Well, those are amazing. So yeah.
Yeah. I only recently started watching like 90s Japanese wrestling where when I can find it, and God, I don't know, I'm kind of in love with that particular style at the moment. I like the intensity and the realism and everything that's attached to it. So yeah, I could definitely see for that style, particularly the stuff in the early mid 90s. All right, guys. So we spent a good amount of time here talking about feuds past and present. So what I want to do now is, we haven't had any epic rants today, so I want to try something new. Let's start with you, Houkster. Tell me something that you either really like right now or that's really bothering you. Take a few minutes and just rant about it. What's bothering you? This is your rant of the week.
Well, my positive and my negative are actually the exact same subject, and that has been the recent use of jobbers in the WWE. We've seen both on NXT and in the main roster, SmackDown and Raw, some local talent, some local indie guys that nobody really knows who they are, getting slobber knocked in the ring, and a bunch of online comments I've seen lately about people complaining. It's like, you don't get people over by having them wrestle nobodies, because obviously they're going to win. Like, well, yeah, duh. But one of our biggest problems that we've been complaining about for years is the 50-50 booking, or the countless squash matches that we've seen on enhancement guys that are trying to make it big and in the blues and a million things, and just you end up with guys like nobody cares about, like Zack Ryder, and you could even possibly argue Dolph Ziggler in there. But with the use of these local guys as jobbers, you're going to give those real main roster guys someone to boost up their win records for. Lately, you got just this past week on SmackDown, you had the Wyatts absolutely demolish these two local guys, and you need that to make these guys look stronger, make them look like heel monsters. And I for one, I'm loving it, and I want to see more of it because it boosts the reputation of these guys as killers, monsters. And I'm just tired of people complaining. It's like you finally get something that you've been crying for, and now you're complaining about it. Really? STFU, and enjoy the product.
Yeah, damn it, enjoy the product. All right. Cedric, what's really grinding your gears?
Well, let me tell you something, but I'm just joking. Anyway, I got two, and I'll make it quick. Internet fans, casual fans, if the only thing they've ever watched is WWE wrestling, please don't comment on indie wrestlers. Don't be talking about how bad they are, how they suck, this and that. There is more in the wrestling universe than the actual WWE product. Case in point, I was reading some guys going, actually more than, it was like 10 or at least 10 folks talking about how, who's this AJ Styles, who's this club, who are these guys, they suck. They even mentioned Daniel Bryan, and I was like, Samoa Joe, and I was like, if you've never seen them outside of the WWE, then you really don't have a leg to stand when you're talking about if they're good or bad. And at the end of the day, a wrestler is only as good or as bad as they're booked. Now, granted, some wrestlers really don't show much promise, either on the mic or wrestling skills, but I'm pretty sure there's much more of them that we've seen them go to other companies and all of a sudden they're stars. Not because that company's standards are low, but because that company realizes the potential and lets them shine. I really think Cody Rhodes is going to be one of those guys that regardless for what company he wrestles, he's going to have really epic matches. It's just the way I see it. So please, if you have never seen anything outside of WWE, don't complain about a specific wrestler or a specific indie company. That's one. Two, I read a news saying that probably Moose is going to be passed to the side, maybe back to Ring of Honor or TNA. WWE's not going to sign him right now because of a 2009 domestic incident that happened, and that on top of what happened with Jerry the King Lawler, which, by the way, that got thrown out, so his suspension got lifted. Here's the thing, guys. This is just my opinion. You guys may or may not disagree. I understand why you're trying to protect your image, but at the same time, this happened in 2009, and whatever happened. He got his suspension. I think Moose was in the NFL. He was suspended a day from his team. He got traded and whatnot. But since then, he's made his life. He got divorced from the lady. The lady did not like the fact that he left millions on the table to join wrestling, so they got divorced. So really, don't bring something from 2009 to 2016 and say, well, let's wait a little while. He already paid his due. Give the guy a chance. Let him wrestle. Let him show us, his talent. He's grown leaps and bounds from when he started to where he is now. And at the same time, we have a lot of current stars that they too have their own skeletons in the closet. So let's not pick and choose who we're going to throw out because of something that happened almost 10 years ago. Let the guys wrestle. Let the talent be the main focus and not all the other stuff. That's just my rant.
Well, thank you. That's a good one. I think.
Add to.
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, I got something I want to add to Cedric's first comment about people crapping on indie wrestlers. That to me is just one of the worst things you can do. These guys working on the indies and some of the guys, who have made names for themselves in ROH and other products, sure, WWE is the major leagues. They're the top company pretty much in the world, second only to New Japan. But crapping on these guys, you go to a local small town venue and say, oh, these guys are horrible. These guys are crap. Well, they're still working on building themselves up. You don't look at the Little League World Series champions and say, well, these guys suck compared to the Yankees. Well, no, duh. They haven't made it there yet. Give them time. Let them build up and let them work on their own merit. If they make it, fantastic. If they don't, well, you know what? Some things aren't meant to be. But don't crap on them for working on what they want to do, for chasing their dreams.
I think, to his first point, you have to look at it in a certain way. That I have a lot of friends that are casual fans, and they come up to me and they go, well, what's so great about it? Just tell what's so great about what's for those people. And I was at WrestleMania, and I've been at other big live events where I hear people behind me go, who's this? And you have to realize that for those people, they don't watch this stuff. It doesn't mean that they don't have a right to say, he sucks in WWE. This is all they've seen of the guy. Maybe he doesn't suck. Actually, we know he's great. But in WWE, what they're watching right now, and you guys cannot tell me that they don't, Carl Anderson and Doc Gallows suck right now. But that's all these people are seeing. But we know, if you've watched them in New Japan, if you watch them in other stuff, we know Carl Anderson's a great singles wrestler. But you don't get to see that right now. So all they're saying is, look, from the vantage point I'm getting, they suck. So WWE needs to let people see why they got signed in the first place. And that's WWE's fault. But that's all they're seeing. So to me, I don't ever get mad at the people that necessarily think they suck. I think it's when you're questioning that they've always sucked, or that you think that they've never done well or whatever, and you show them something from their past and you don't get it, then, it's so weird, because if you've only watched WWE, you don't understand what goes into all the stuff from the other companies and whatever, why they're great. You may not like that style. You're so used to the WWE style. So it's hard at times to try to understand that more casual fan from our perspective, because we see so many different things. But I do think it's wrong for you to go to your local indie and crap on these guys compared to like a WWE guy, because it's very much like when you watch a high school or college player and then you go watch them in the NFL. The level of how great these guys are is so strong from like you're gonna watch the WWE is the cream of the crop as far as that talent that's there. They're great. You're gonna go watch your local indie. That's totally different levels. That's totally wrong. So I agree with you on that point. And I had a point to make on this. Oh, we talked about the Moose thing yesterday, and I think the Moose thing is they're about to rescind the thing with the Moose thing because they didn't know how long the Jerry Lawler thing was going to play out. They had no idea that the next day the charges are going to get dismissed. I think from a corporate perspective, you got to look at it like this. With the ESPN deal they have right now, when Moose gets signed, ESPN, all these sports stations that are going to cover this, they're going to go back to that domestic violence thing. They're going to go back to all these things that he did. Oh, his terrible playing career, by the way. He was a bad offensive lineman.
Yeah, he was.
That's why he left. That's why he left football, because he knew he was a bad offensive lineman. Which that girl should have realized herself. But whatever. They had their issues. And y'all are right. I said it. It's silly for WWE to do this. They could have signed him and let him sit in NXT for a little bit and whatever, or go do the Performance Center stuff, whatever. But they have their reasons, and they're a corporation. That's what happens sometimes with corporations. They have to make political decisions that aren't great, but I think he winds up there at some point, whether it's in a month or two. Maybe he goes and works for Evolve for a while, which is with WWE, and then he goes to NXT. It's not. We shouldn't always jump at the first report we read or whatever, and think that that's the end of it. As far as I'm not a guy that totally tries to be negative per se. I just want to give it up to Lucha Underground for getting me really excited for the Ultima Lucha that's about to start, and their 3 series, their 3 show series they're about to do. That match between Puma and Dragon Azteca was great on that show. And just everything they did to make you, okay, now I'm ready for this Ultimate Lucha about to happen. So I just want to give the people booking that show, maybe not as strong as the first season, but this season has been just as good. And man, I'm excited for the ending here.
Yeah, I know Chris DeJoseph does as far as the way that stuff's booked, the production value is fantastic. Obviously, just a great show all around. For me, I really wanted to talk about enhancement talent too, and since Alex sort of already covered that, I think the main thing I maybe not gripe about, but just talk about in general are some of the internet wrestling fans, which I think we're included in that, but I was a mark once. I didn't understand how wrestling worked. I cried when the Ultimate Warrior beat Hulk Hogan. So I understand what it's like to be on the other side of that and not understand what's happening with wrestling. But what I dislike is social media and its effect that it's had on wrestling. Literally, I can't get on a social media webpage without there being so much negativity toward everything. Now, some people think, like, you'll see memes and people think they're funny, and that's why they put memes out there. But, oh man, and maybe he deserves it with everything else that's going on, but all the stuff with Roman Reigns that I've seen over the past, 2 weeks, and hundreds and hundreds of memes that I've seen about him and everything that's happened with him. The guy obviously took something he wasn't supposed to, some type of amphetamine. He didn't pass his drug test, got suspended for a month, and all the stuff that's going on. People forget, Randy Orton's been suspended many, many times. And this is prior to the 3 strikes rule thing. He was suspended, sent home, whatever, I don't know how many times. People love the guy. They're like, oh, if Randy Orton would come back, that'd be great. Stone Cold, he had a domestic assault back when he was still wrestling. It's like people have selective memories over what they want to do because they like the guy so much. They're just going to forget about anything that maybe he did. But then you get a guy like Reigns that people already don't like, and my goodness, you bury him, and then you bury him on TV too, which the WWE did this past week. Now, probably out of the four of us, I'm most likely to be the biggest of the Roman Reigns fans. I'm not sure where Sean sits on this one, but I know for me, I've always thought the guy had a great, exciting moveset. I always thought the guy was a great athlete. Thought he could move around, could wrestle. He needed to work on his selling ability, but people forget what wrestling was like in '93 to about '96, particularly in the WWF at that time. The wrestling quality was not very good, and that's what I grew up in as a kid. So, to me, people just need to understand that what you're being given today is a great product. And maybe it's not as entertaining as the Attitude Era, which personally, the matches in the Attitude Era weren't that great. The match quality may not be on the level of the Ruthless Aggression Era, but what we have right now in the WWE is nothing really to scoff at outside of it being maybe a bit too long. With this brand split coming, I can see there being some really fantastic things because we're going to get to see different talent now on the different shows, and they're going to be keeping some of these guys. I won't have to see them 3 times a week. So, yeah, just quit being so damn selective. If you're gonna hate on a guy because they had a domestic assault, then hate everyone who's ever had one. If you're gonna get upset at a guy because he failed a drug test, be mad at everyone that's ever failed a drug test. I mean, I can't be mad at Hornswoggle, and he failed a drug test, Jeez. But, people make mistakes, and at least Roman Reigns owned to his right away, as opposed to some of the other people who would say that they don't know what happened. So, my rant's over. My apologies. I went off on a tangent. So.
No, you make real good points, and two of my favorite wrestlers of all time, Shawn Michaels and Jeff Hardy, they're probably the biggest examples of failed wellness policies. I mean, heck, Shawn Michaels was a champ, and he was showing up blitzed out of his mind for years.
Yeah, go ahead. No, so you go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
No, I insist.
Okay, I'll go ahead. What I was gonna say is I'm on my 2 points, and this is gonna not so much a rebuttal or anything, but it's kind of a response. I was gonna say, Sean, look, on the people have the right to say whatever they want. That's the beauty of this country, and that's why we get so much idiocracy online, especially on social media. And you're right. If somebody hasn't seen anything and they're evaluating what they're seeing, shoot, I could say myself, but what I'm seeing from Gallows and Anderson is horrible. If this was the first time that I've ever seen them, yeah, definitely it is horrible. But at the same time, I can actually look up some stuff if I feel like it before I start saying, well, they suck and they always suck. You're right. That's part of the blame is on the company, but at the same time, the folks that I'm talking about are people who are constantly every day writing on a specific website, and they're talking like they don't want to check anything else. So if you don't want to check anything else outside of WWE and that's all you want to base it on, just realize that there is more than just the WWE. Now I'm not, and again, the casual fans, the ones that see a show every now and then, to me they're not really fans. They just every now and then show up and they'll see it and they'll have their opinion. I don't really pay attention too much to someone who says these guys suck, but they've never seen anything outside of them for the past 2 years. But it's folks that they comment every single day, crapping on TNA, crapping on Lucha Underground, crapping on indie wrestling, crapping on guys that came from indie wrestling to the WWE because they don't want to look at anything else. Just the same way we think the WWE is the greatest thing here. In Mexico, AAA or CMLL, for them, that is the cream of the crop. And anybody who goes there is somebody. And I'm pretty sure the Japanese companies and other companies in other parts of the world, they feel the same way. So if all you want to watch is WWE, then just realize that, carry a disclaimer, hey, this is all I've seen, so my apologies if my opinion it's not really founded on true data, educated. It's just a quick and opinion. That's one. And on the whole Moose thing, I didn't just jump on the first article that I read. My thing kind of, and I think Rasquash made it sound even better, is the whole thing like we pick and choose, and even the company themselves pick and choose based on, like you said, there are companies what's best for business, but at the same time, it's like like Rasquash is saying, even within the company itself, they pick and choose who's gonna get hit the hardest with the rules and who's gonna get forgiven multiple times, who's gonna get suspended indefinitely, and who's gonna just get suspended for a few weeks or whatnot. So that's my main thing. That happened in 2009. Whether they signed him before the Jerry the King Lawler thing got fixed or afterwards, it's still gonna come up. So regardless of, just, and I think even in the article it said that they had told him, hey, let's let the King situation get fixed. Let's see what happens with this before we decide with you. And they even mentioned Adam Rose and how they fired him between his domestic thing and I guess drug test failures. They released him as well. But my thing is, don't pick and choose who you're gonna make a big deal, big stink of, and then others you kind of like just let it slide, because like I said, that we have people currently, and Rasquatch mentioned a few, and there's many others that they too have their own things in their skeletons that if people want to dig in, they can, but they just make a look the other way, and who knows, maybe they don't bring up the whole Moose past, but they obviously the WWE did, which was one of the reasons they mentioned why they were going to hold off for now. I kind of agree with Rasquatch. If you're going to do it with one person, do it with everybody. Don't just pick and choose. That's just my thing.
Right, but it's different when it's like any other job. When you get background checked and you're not with the company yet, they have the right to not hire you. They're not going to look at people that are with the company and did something in their past. They're already with the company. They don't care about that. It's, I have people that I work with that have stolen in the past or done terrible things in the past. When I got hired, they flagged me for something and I had to go and explain, and they said, okay, we'll hire you. Something happens, then, we're going to come down on you really hard or whatever, because, we haven't seen enough of you as much as we've seen of the people that have been working with us for how long or whatever. You're right. You mentioned the stuff with that they're not closing that door, but it's on them whenever they want to. If they want to let him sit for a couple of months and then sign him after the stuff's blown over, then you're right. Don't pick and choose, but it's different when you're coming in the door than when you've been there for years and years and years, like Jerry Lawler, and you're also important to the company. Very much like Roman Reigns, where with Roman Reigns, they've done this in the past, they could have waited until after Battleground, or they could have waited until whenever they wanted to suspend Roman Reigns. But they were smart, and they knew, okay, if we do it right now, he can still show up for Battleground, and we still get this match that we won't get after the brand split. And then you do, and then we're gonna just. And also, almost everybody else has been depushed, but because they have faith in Roman Reigns and Vince loves Roman Reigns, he's probably not going to go through that, right? This happens in every company and everything that you go through. The people that have been there, the people that they think is important, are going to get treated better than people that are coming in the door. It's just the way it is. It's not right.
It's pretty sad, It happened in 2009, like you're saying. And it happens in the UFC. People have gotten fired from the UFC, never given a chance for dumb shit. And you've had guys that are, like you said, already established that have done 10 times worse, and they don't even get a slap on the wrist. If it wasn't because they actually get arrested, look at John Jones, for example, and that's a different subject. But
yeah,
it is what it is. Like you said, you made a good point there. They always said it. They've never been shy of saying what's best for business, and really, it's not business with the fans. It's more monetarily. So, and just like Stone Cold said, they're so afraid in certain areas that we might never see what we saw in the past. And I know Rasquatch mentions different eras and how good, how bad it was compared to today. But like I was just watching some videos from back in the day, and my kids were watching and they were like, it seems like people are just enjoying this stuff more than they are today. And I was even telling my kids, and I even told them, my son, and supposedly that was the bad era. And yet look at the fans, look at you yourself, how you getting all emotional, all crazy about this. So yeah, it is what it is, I guess.
Hey, but you should want to be passionate about what you're talking about.
At the end of the day, I think that's what it comes down to is a passion. And I think when we do rant about things or when we get upset about things, I think it's because they really speak to us. Like Cedric last week with AJ Styles, like I was moved by we got to the end of it. When he started talking about his stuff with AJ, it was really moving. But to me, I just feel like there's a lot that doesn't get addressed. Certain things that do get swept under the rug. But I think in today's day and age, those things can't happen because there's too much social media. There's too much of everything. So you can't do things like you used to be able to do in the past. I mean, Sid almost killed Arn Anderson back in the day, literally with a pair of scissors. But you can't. Nobody talks about it. That's just the way wrestling was back then. Hell, Awesome Kong damn near choked out, what's her name? Not that long ago,
Rebby Sky.
Yeah, Rebby Sky. So, I mean, just things like that can't be tolerated in today's day and age. And in some ways it's better, and in some ways it's worse. But
yeah, look at that, the Seth Rollins' old girlfriend. She got fired because somebody found old stuff on her Instagram. I mean,
yep.
That's pretty harsh, but the company had to make a choice at that point.
You just got to be smart. Like in today's day and age, you just got to be intelligent about what it is that you're doing and how you want to present yourself. Free country, but it's also a free country on the other end of it where people can do what they want because it's a free country. So if somebody doesn't want to hire you, or if you lose your job over something that you think stupid, well, that's also their prerogative. So totally get your point on that one, though, Sean. It is a lot harder when you're trying to get into something than once you've already gotten there. So, all right, guys, that was good discussion. Let's go ahead and move on. We've done our praise and rants of the week. What I want to do now is, Hawkster, it was your pick this week, so why don't you talk to us about the Instant Classic match of the week? What did you select?
All right, I picked from ROH 2004, Samoa Joe versus CM Punk 2. This was the second match in a trilogy of matches in ROH, and providing a little bit of backstory. The first match was a very good spectacle. It was that again, going a little bit of backstory here. With ROH, they had the 60-minute time limit. So if a match went that full hour, it was decided on as a draw. Nobody got the pinfall, nobody wins. And that first match ended in a draw. The whole point of the match was to determine who really was the best in ROH. Punk wanted to test Samoa Joe's stamina and see if he really could last that full hour. There was a lot of jib and jabs about his cardio and about his endurance, and so he kind of took it easy on him for the first majority of the match, wearing him down with headlocks and submissions. But Joe did manage to survive the full 60, and he held his own. And for the second match, Punk pushed the envelope a little bit more, and you got to see a whole lot from both men. They really pulled just about everything out of the bag, and that's all I'm going to say for the sneak peek before we really get into the analysis. So if you guys want to take it away from here.
All right. Cedric, do you want to start us off, talk about your thoughts on this match before you got a virus?
Those are my thoughts. A lot of viruses and freaking a lot of pop-ups. But I did finally manage to watch it. It's amazing. I actually searched it in the website and it said results not found. And I'm like, I have the darn link here, but it eventually worked. Since I took so long in my rant, I'm gonna make this quick. It really good pace. Again, for those of you that have never seen anything of Samoa Joe outside of WWE, definitely take the time to find a a match outside of WWE of either Samoa Joe or CM Punk, but make sure not to use this link because it has viruses. But uh, it's a really good match in the sense that, like how Stanley says, it was a really, first of all, to see a man of that size last an hour, to see anybody last an hour in wrestling, to me that's pretty amazing. Not just because you need the stamina, but just how much can you really do. So we have wrestlers today that are great, but their moveset is so small that they would definitely not be able to keep you interested for an hour. And these guys found a way to do so. That was the first thing that I noticed. Second thing is the pace. For the first half of the match, it was CM Punk testing Samoa Joe with lots of headlocks, a lot of chain wrestling, a lot of moves that made the big guy have to get out of it. And by big guy, I don't mean right back. Don't get all happy.
Feed me more.
Yeah, don't eat too much either, man. I heard you had a surgery. I'm glad you're doing good. Anyway, then the second half, you see Samoa Joe kick in his submission. That's the reason why they call it Samoa's submission machine. All his submissions, his stronger moves. And then they get aerial. It gets faster pace. It gets slow. And then at the end, we have another draw. So did you feel like, oh my gosh, what the heck? No, you couldn't wait for the next match. You knew there was going to be another match afterwards because they had to put an end to this feud, which even though there was a third match, there were many other matches afterwards anyway. But it was good pace, good set of movesets. It showcased both athletes what their strong points were, and it also showcased that they could do more than what you were normally used to seeing from them. Can I see a match like this in today's WWE? Maybe not. I think people will get a little bit, but in the first 15, 20 minutes, depending who it is, they might start chanting boring. And there was one guy that did chant boring. You can actually hear him in the link clearly. That must have been a WWE casual fan. But anyway, I digress. Good match. Definitely. I always liked CM Punk even before his WWE days. And Samoa Joe, I've always thought he was a great wrestler. And even good old JR at one point tried to get him. Why it didn't happen, I don't know. But I'm glad he's in NXT and can't wait till he gets called up to the main roster. Hopefully the fans will be more accepting. I know in NXT they are, but hopefully when he gets put up to the main roster, he gets more accepted. And hopefully CM Punk wins his match. Not really, but anyway, I digress.
I just kind of want him to fight, but all right.
Yeah, he is fighting. Legal battle.
I'll use quotation marks fighting because he was supposed to fight earlier and he had an injury, so who knows. But all right. So before I got a virus, I was pretty excited to hop on and go ahead and watch this match. Finally was able to watch part of it. But the footage that Houston provided was not great. So it was a little grainy and slow. So ended up having to watch sort of an abridged version. So I'll be honest, I didn't get to watch this entire thing. But from the stuff that I did get to see, the one thing that stood out to me in this match was the chain wrestling, particularly in the beginning of it. Both guys could do it, and both guys did it pretty well. And I liked the kind of the back and forth, the psychology, the slow pace, particularly in the beginning of this. But when they talked about the 1 hour Broadway that they had before this, to me is just amazing. Anybody that can go an hour, I know Jay Lethal, Roderick Strong went for an hour last year, but we don't get enough of those types of matches. One of my favorite matches of all time, Bret Hart, Shawn Michaels, WrestleMania went over an hour. So you can keep attention span if the match is good. So, I think that overall both guys showed the type of athletes they were. Like CM Punk's not an elite athlete, and neither is Samoa Joe. But both of them knew how to use their athleticism in the right way. And so I think that's what I was most appreciative of just watching this match is they knew what they could do, and they did it the best that they could based around what skill set that they had. So overall, thought it was a pretty good match until I got a virus, and then after that, I decided, you know what, I'm gonna have to watch the highlights. But good pick this week. Hawkster, I was going to tell you, we talked about maybe posting the match of the week on the on the Facebook page for everybody to watch. I think we skipped this one this week. Just for the sake of all the listeners.
Of all of those mobile devices and computers out there, I think you're right. I will go ahead and post the 7-minute highlights from YouTube. Yeah. Fans out there really want to see this match, and I really do encourage you to see it in its entirety. But don't go to VO.com, horrible website. You're gonna have to go to ROH.com, Ring of Honor's website, and you're gonna have to buy the DVD collection with Samoa Joe and ROH and CM Punk. It to me will definitely be worth your money. But yeah, I do apologize for the technical difficulties and the electronic sickness that I may or may not have provided unintentionally.
Yeah, my Kaspersky went crazy. But all right. So, Sean, did you have any thoughts on this match?
I also wanted to avoid getting a virus, so I had to watch the highlights. I didn't get to. I actually started watching some ROH while I was in college, but I didn't get to watch any of like CM Punk stuff. So I was one of those that watched him in WWE and then went backwards and watched things from other companies. I never actually really got to see this, and just from the highlights I saw, it's just these two, and we know what great athletes these two are, or just from in a wrestling perspective, just how good they are. What Joe does, even at that stage, how good he was. Just two guys that basically you're trying to prove which one's better than the other. So you're trying to outlast the guy, he's Punk's trying to get at Joe, knows he wants to ground him. And then Joe, these guys just beat the tar at each other, do everything they can, and it's a freaking awesome match. And you were talking about 1 hour Broadways. That Roderick Strong Jay Lethal match wasn't that good. This one certainly holds your attention for the entire hour.
All right. So, thanks again, Hawkster, for the matchup. Even though we had
virus.
we had a virus, electronic sickness. But
that's all right. I do want to put in some last few comments, if I may.
Yeah.
What I really appreciated about this match, and again, I apologize for the issues there, but my favorite parts of this match was you did get to see everything. You saw chain wrestling, you saw submissions, you saw striking, you saw technical grappling, you saw a little bit of high flying. You see Punk pulling out the moonsault, doing his rendition of the Undertaker's Old School, except he puts a leg drop on the arm rather than the elbow. But yeah, there was just so much in this that you really had to appreciate. And keep in mind, this match was 12 years ago. This is when they were still trying to make names for themselves. And I think this was probably the match that really put those two guys on the map for a lot of wrestling fans. And the finish to me was really the best part. You have Samoa Joe dropping a muscle buster on CM Punk from the rope, and just both guys are just laying lifeless in the ring when time expires. And you mentioned it earlier, Cedric, like 15 minutes into the match, you have a couple guys in the crowd yelling, boring, boring. But by the time that 60 minutes expired, every single person in the crowd was screaming 5 more minutes, 5 more minutes. And that to me is really what will put an exclamation point on this match and what really made it, I think, stand as a great match, an instant classic, if you will.
Yeah, for sure. Definitely definitely met the criteria of what we're looking for in one of those matches, and obviously did have pretty much everything that you're looking for in a great match. So as much flack as we want to give you, it was still a great choice. And I'm looking forward to seeing what we have coming up next week, and maybe what Cedric's thinking of doing. So these matches have been great because outside of this one, I was able to watch most of them with my kids, and so sitting down with my kids and watching some of these matches and seeing what they think about it, I think is one of the best things. So All right. So, covered those. What we have left now is to cover our tag team fantasy booking. We've got 2 matches for action tonight. So, what I want to do is, Sean, I want to start out with your opinion of the matchup of Red Dragon versus the American Wolves. And I know this has actually, they have actually squared off a few times. So, but in your opinion, these 2 tag teams squaring off, how do you think the match goes? Who do you think the victor will be?
I would think Red Dragon, just because they're the more high-profile guys right now, would probably get the victory. But man, these 2 have similar styles, as in O'Reilly and Rick and Davey Richards are going to come in with the kicks, and you can get the submissions in there as well. Bobby Fish and Eddie Edwards are those underrated guys that sometimes, I know Edwards is shining right now in TNA, but Richards was always seen as the bigger star, very much like O'Reilly's seen as the bigger star for Red Dragon. And you've got these 2 would work a phenomenal match, and you're going to get your crazy spots, I'm sure. You'll get your ground-based stuff. Man, if it's not high up there on the when you're thinking about big matches for that year, it'd be disappointing.
So you're gonna take Red Dragon, you said, in this one?
Yeah.
Okay. Cedric, what about you?
Even though Sean and I have started our feud in this podcast, I'm just joking. No, I agree with him. I'll keep away like whatever's going on. I'll just keep it as a fantasy tournament. But they're so similar that it's very difficult to almost pick one over the other. Obviously, in a series of matches, they'll definitely probably break even. But just for sake of one round, winner take all type match, I'll give it to Red Dragon. I definitely like their both teams are hard hitting, flying, submissions, technical, and all that. But I was watching some matches today, and I couldn't get over the strong style, if I can call it that, style that Red Dragon has. Definitely them going so much to Ring of Honor, New Japan, and whatnot. I think their style is just so much more hard hitting that I picked them over the Wolves, but definitely will be an amazing match.
Okay. Hauxer, your thoughts?
For me, these 2 teams have faced off quite a few times, so there's a lot there in the video library to go check out, and it is tough because they are very, very similar teams. But for me, I'm going to have to go with Red Dragon as well, and the main reason for that is as tenacious and as aggressive as both teams can be, I really feel that Red Dragon may have the upper edge when it comes to innovation with their in-ring style. I think they are a little bit more creative at times. But really the heel tactics that they'll use and the mind games that they have both in and out of the ring, I think they're really good at getting inside of their opponents' heads. So I'm going to have to go with Red Dragon as well.
Okay, so sounds like we may have a clean sweep here, because I also would have taken Red Dragon, primarily watching a lot of their stuff recently that they were doing in Japan, and like Cedric had mentioned, the stronger style that they like to work. I also love the MMA aspect that those guys bring into the ring. I think anytime you can tie like a legitimate MMA background into your wrestling style, I think it definitely adds something to the tag team. Both teams, though, great tag teams. Both have great tag team moves. So this would have been a classic. But at the end of the day, I see Red Dragon moving forward. So we will go ahead and push them ahead in the fantasy booking. Next is a tough one, and man, I actually had to go watch quite a bit more footage for both of these teams. But we have the Kings of Wrestling versus the Von Erichs, and again, very, very tough one to pick. We're going to go in reverse order here, so I guess we'll start with
the Hulkster, and who do you think would win in this matchup?
Oh man, you could not have picked a harder toss-up for me when it comes to two fantasy bookings. You have the Von Erichs, who, to me, they were probably one of my favorite old school teams, going back pre-Attitude Era, and just about any time before then. They're probably one of my favorite tag teams of all time. And when you're just talking about legacy and just what they did for that time, they were incredibly innovative, and you couldn't be more over in the state of Texas than the Von Erichs were. And then you go with the Kings of Wrestling, who, to me, they were my favorite non-WWE indie tag team just about of all time. So you have literally the 2 pound for pound strongest guys that never made it to the WWE at the time. I mean, Cesaro obviously came up, and Hero did have his time in NXT or Florida Championship Wrestling, Cassius Ohno, but this is a huge toss-up for me, because really what they did for their time periods was just so new and so crazy, moves you've never seen from either team that anybody else was doing. So this is a toss-up. I really don't care who moves on, but for me, I may have to go with the Von Erichs, and again, just because to me, they have that prestige. And I know we don't want to put prestige in here, but man, when you strike that claw into somebody, it's pretty much game over. And I don't know if Kings of Wrestling can withstand that. And man, this is just a tough one. Like, I really don't care who moves on, but I may have to go with Von Erich.
Okay. Cedric, can you help him out? Who did you think should move on?
Well, I thought about what happened in the first round, and I saw how Prestige went over what may or may not have been a victory for beer money. But I watched some of their matches again. I watched some of King of Wrestling's matches, and as much as they meant to the state of Texas, to wrestling and whatnot, and as much as the famous claw was so feared, especially back then, definitely a feared move. I think even in Puerto Rico, I might have seen either one of the Von Erichs actually go down there and apply it to one of the main wrestlers over there, and it was always advertised as the move that nobody can get out of. To me, based on the movesets that I saw and the quickness and just the innovation, I'm gonna pick King of Wrestling. Again, I'm taking completely the prestige out of it. I'm taking away, because obviously the truth is, I looked at every team that did not make it, every team that did make it through the tournament, and I just kept on telling myself, if we keep going by the prestige, then definitely the Von Erichs is gonna win the whole thing, because who's gonna really out prestige these guys?
Maybe the road.
But prestige wise, not sure. Maybe strength wise, but I'll go with Kings of Wrestling again. I just kept it based on only on wrestling. I had to put a complete blind eye to everything else. So.
Okay. Sean, what's your thoughts on this matchup?
I mean, I don't know y'all's whole tournament or whatever, but just from looking at this, I also growing up in Dallas, living there for 20 years. I mean, if you lived there, you knew about the Von Erichs. I mean, they were everything to wrestling, and these guys were all about brawling and just. I mean, they could do some of the. I mean, obviously different eras. You know, what you do now, what's different than what you do then. Man, I have to go with Kings of Wrestling for Cesaro, because there's not a guy that matches Cesaro in Claudio Castagnoli in the way that you're gonna get from the Von Erichs. I think I mean, Kerry was strong, so was Kevin, but I think Cesaro, just in the versatility that he has, and also Chris Hero, I think those two would eventually overwhelm the Von Erichs, if you're looking at it from a straight wrestling perspective. Obviously, prestige. There's no way you can. There's as was mentioned. There's very many tag teams that are going to outdo the Von Erichs on that, especially if you're. Let's say this match was happening in Dallas or something, but I got to go with the Kings of Wrestling too. It's
Okay, so
Sean, expect a friend request by me, by the way. This is Cedric.
so
Biased.
so I guess I have an opportunity to tie this if I want to, but I am not going to. I actually believe that the Kings of Wrestling should move forward, mainly because the reason the Von Erichs won out against Beer Money in the last one, it was partly about prestige, but it was also partly about the style of wrestling that you had. The Von Erichs were guys who were powerful enough to keep Beer Money at bay. They could wrestle with them, but they could brawl with them, so they kind of could beat them in almost every area except for maybe in like pure tag team wrestling. But
even drinking, right?
well, I don't know about that. Maybe drug use, but drinking, I don't know.
No.
But but let's see.
Here.
I would say that with Cesaro or I guess Castagnoli and Hero in this instance, those guys are strong enough to compete with both these guys. They have more athleticism. They have just as good, if not a better, wrestling background, and Hero can apply some of the mixed martial arts. So for all the realism that both of these tag teams use, if I combine both of them, I think at the end of the day it comes down to athleticism, and I think that the Kings of Wrestling would have more of that than would the Von Erichs. So I think the Kings of Wrestling are going to move forward in this tournament as a vote of 3-1. So be interesting to see. So as we wrap up the show today, who do we have for next week for the fantasy bookings?
Alrighty. To keep it even, because right now we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 matches left. Let's go with 3, so then we'll have 2 for the last one. Legion of Doom versus Demolition is 1. The Outsiders versus the Rock and Roll Express is the other one. And Harlem Heat versus the Head Shrinkers.
Okay, cool. So yeah, we'll take a little bit of time to do those next week. And have you put any thought into your Instant Classic match of the week next week?
I have. I was thinking of bringing something completely different from probably you guys are used to watching. You might surprise me or not, I don't know. But I was thinking of bringing a Instant Classic. Unfortunately, I couldn't find the one that I wanted, but I guess the second best we'll have to do. I'm going to bring from the WWC in Puerto Rico, Carlos Colon versus Ric Flair for the Universal title that was created when they first met, and they combined the Puerto Rican title with the NWA title to make the Universal title.
All right. Now, was this the match where they replaced the ropes with barbed wire?
I was debating and bringing that one. I wasn't sure that would probably come down the road. I'm telling you guys, I was surprised when I found this YouTube channel and I went through hundreds of videos, just the titles. I was amazed how many legends from the United States were part of Puerto Rican wrestling. From Ric Flair, we had Bruiser Brody, we had the Four Horsemen at one point. It was just amazing. So those will definitely come as my turns for Instant Classic matches come around. Definitely, we'll have some barbed wire matches. We'll have fire matches. We've seen it in Puerto Rico. So definitely, but this one just a normal match between them two for the title.
Okay.
And I'll provide the link. I'll provide the link on the messenger page, and hopefully I won't be the one providing viruses this time.
All right. Well, looking forward to it then. And before we get off here, I want to thank Sean again for being on with us from Wrestling to the Max. And before we leave here, Sean, do you want to go ahead and just let everyone know once again about your guys' network and your channel?
Yeah, thank you for having me. It's been a blast. It's been a lot of fun. So you guys are great. I mean, I know we had that little bit of a little feud there, but being good wrestling fans, we got through it, right? It's fun. Yeah, just anywhere there's podcasts, iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, YouTube, whatever, you can go just subscribe to W2M Network itself. It's listed just like that, W2M Network, and you can get the wrestling podcasts, all the other podcasts together, or you can just go find the Wrestling to the Max podcast by itself. 2 times a week, Tuesday morning and Friday morning, talking pretty much everything American wrestling, some New Japan and other Japanese stuff, and whatever we can cover in there in that allotted time that we have. Well, we try to get it done.
Awesome. And once again, just want to say thank you. And we'll definitely have to have you back on again down the road for sure. And anybody else have any takeaways today?
Yeah, I just want to say it may take me a full week to stop crying over the Von Erichs being eliminated, but I do believe that the right decision was made. That the versatility that both those guys have, Castagnoli and Hero, it makes sense, and you guys are right. I will support this decision, even though I voted against it. I'm with you.
Well, good.
Good is real.
I was saying good because we didn't care anyway. You lost.
Damn.
Jeez.
Yeah, no.
Sean, do you see the love here, right?
Yeah.
No, that's what he gets for giving me a virus. He could take that.
All goes back to the virus.
I'm just sitting here minding my own business, trying to work on my computer, and it's like my screen's flashing, But all right, podcast almost didn't happen today, but no, I digress. Thank you guys again. It was some really good discussion today. I always enjoy when we can have a little bit of a debate, and I think we'll continue with these rants every week. That was a lot of fun. And I felt better. I really did. It's like therapy, wrestling therapy. All right, guys, we're just shy of that 2-hour mark, and it's been fantastic. Once again, thanks to Sean. Thank you guys for joining us in the round table. And if you guys have any suggestions for topics or anything like that, any listeners out there, just let us know, and we'll discuss what we can when we can. So until next time, Jobber's Court is adjourned. Thank you.